Tal will show us how to play. Stockfish will tell us what it means. You and I, we're in this challenge together. Here we go. Game 1 is Tal versus Timon. We're at move 38. Okay, so right here, Tal has the white pieces. He's just moved his king over to b1. I'm trying to figure out, what does the computer think this evaluation can be? He is up a pawn, so if everything else was equal, it should be +1. I'm going to take a look first at king safety. He has his king on f7 versus Tal has his on b1 behind these pawns. That could potentially be a bit safer. Tal has a rook for the piece and the pawn. And now looking at piece placement, he's got his knight potentially looking to get over at some point. Kind of hard to get over to that king. Tal, on the other hand, he's got his rook all the way along this back rank, cutting off the king. And then we have bishops of opposite color that could be a little bit drawish. And then the other thing hanging in the air, it looks like he has a weak pawn here on g3. That's potentially going to get lost. And now Timon, he's going to have all of these passed pawns just plowing forward. That's going to get really, really dangerous, especially with the knight and the bishop over here. Kind of with all that said, I'm going to give a positional evaluation for what I think this is going to be. Then I'm going to check it against Stockfish. Come up in your head what you think that evaluation is going to be. I'm going to guess a +2.5. One is Tal, so you're going to bet against him. That's going to be kind of crazy. He's up a pawn, so it should be +1 if everything else is equal. But the thing I'm really factoring into this is this king safety. Okay, so we can see by the computer evaluation, it has it at +0.3. I was off by 2.2. Here's the scoring evaluation to see what your score might have gotten. We are playing this game up to absolute 15. So if I get positive 15 points, there's going to be a reward. If I get negative 15 points, there's going to be a punishment. Follow along, and you could follow the same punishment reward cycle that I am. 13, Tal has just captured this knight here on c4. So the natural response is to recapture and to regain material equality. Tal's going to have given up the bishop pair, which is a potential long-term weakness. So his opponent is going to have a backwards pawn here on d6, which is a long-term weakness for black. Tal does have a little bit of a space advantage. He has this advanced pawn on a5, which is, holding back this pawn as well as this pawn. His dark bishop is a little bit more dynamic. It's got a little bit more range, some squares to go to versus this bishop. And king safety, king safety, both kings seem to be very safe. I think after this here, then maybe naturally we're going to get, rook here to pressure this. I could see this bishop landing here on b6 as a long-term outpost as Tal builds up more and more pressure. Okay, so let me know what you think the evaluation's going to be. I'm actually going to give this a very slight advantage for Tal. I'm giving it +1.1. Okay, the computer's done crunching the numbers. It gives a basically even position. It's got +0.2 right here. I was potentially overvaluing that space advantage. His opponent does have the bishop pair, which is a long-term strength. Okay, so we're back here at 0 points. If I don't make it and I don't get positive 15, I'm going to be doing a snow angel here in the dark, in the middle of the night, in my backyard. That's not going to be very fun. We do have even material, but Tal has a large space advantage right here. So he has this pawn all the way up here on h6. It is only 2 moves away from promotion. And you might think, okay, cool, that's a very long way away from happening. But let's just imagine briefly a couple of things. Let's imagine that this bishop moves to right here. Let's imagine this rook moves back to right here, and then anything else happens. Tal has the option to sacrifice his bishop for this pawn. If this recapture happens, now this pawn is going forward. And that's a very, very common tactic as we get here to the endgame. So this might not look like a big deal, but it is a big long-term asset for Tal. Tal's bishop is a little bit better here. It's got a little bit more range than this, defensive role bishop. And then in terms of pawn breaks and dynamics, what pawn pushes do either player have? I don't think it makes sense for his opponent to push either of these two pawns because it's going to be captured and that position is going to open up. Conversely, Tal, this one right here, C4, he's got 1, 2 currently defending it, and his opponent has 1, 2, 3 attacking it. So he doesn't have quite enough defenders, but that doesn't mean he can't move his king up here to b3 and prepare it. He could move his rook over here as well to prepare it. So if he is able to push this pawn, let's say that those pawns are traded off, this one for this one, Tal is going to have a queen side pawn majority. It's going to be a 2 versus 1 on the queen side. That is a long-term strength. And when you couple that along with this, that could be an overwhelming advantage. So all that being said, I'm going to reveal my evaluation here in just a minute. And I've got Tal. I've got him as an advantage right now. I've got him at a plus 1.5 right now. I think it is an advantage. It might be a winning advantage. He has to finagle it. I don't think it's super overwhelming. It seems like maybe with perfect play, his opponent should be able to hold on. Okay, so we have the computer evaluating this at plus 0.6. That makes a whole lot of sense because I always over-evaluate what I think my position is. I always push for a win when maybe I shouldn't. And for all of those curious, this game ended in a peaceful draw. If I make it all the way up to positive 15, what does that mean? That means I get some mint chocolate chip ice cream tonight. I'm pretty stoked about that. That is basically the best flavor of ice cream that exists on this entire planet. I would say if you disagree, then put it in the comments. But I mean, come on, really? Mikhail is down 1 pawn. He's got 3 pawns versus a pawn and a knight. 1 rook for each opponent. From a space perspective, obviously, Tal is much further advanced. His king is all the way up here on the 6th rank versus his opponent's king is stuck on the back rank. I'm not positive on this, but I believe that a rook and a knight versus a rook is likely going to be a draw. But assuming I'm correct in thinking that, this and this versus this isn't enough to win the game for Black, Black's only winning chance is this H-pawn queening, which obviously isn't going to happen. However, White has all of these options to win the game if any of these pawns are able to make it, especially the C-pawn to become a queen, or if Black is a little bit careless, let's just say, White moves over here, Black takes a pawn. This is going to be a back rank checkmate as currently shown on the board. I'm sure his opponent isn't going to fall for that, but White's the one playing for a win here. So now my question is, does White actually have a win, or is this just a draw? So looking at this for just a second longer, I'm going to tentatively call this zeros across the board, but I want to give one player an advantage. So I am going to give it to White. I'm going to give it a plus 0.1, but I do think this is a dead draw. I think that Black here can, grab this pawn. Oh, wait up a second. Kind of going back on my Black doesn't watch his back rank here. He's potentially going to run into a world of hurt. His king is just so weak right now. I don't see what he's going to do to get out of this mess. So let's just, I think that maybe this rook to c2 move is possible. And then if the rook moves back, the knight moves back. So I feel like this is maybe the move for Black to defend, and I do think it's zeros, but I'll give White a very slight advantage. Okay, so we have a little bit of a surprise. Black does have the advantage here, and my original supposition of rook just capturing here on g2 is correct. Apparently I am underthinking stuff because I was worried about, moves like this, but as I'm looking at it, knowing now that, Black's totally fine, he's got this intermediate check here on f2. He's going to be able to get back in time. So he's able to grab this pawn. He's going to be able to be up by 2 pawns. Obviously, White's got the ability to defend this since the evaluation isn't higher, but Black does have the advantage here. And for all interested parties, this game ends with Black able to take it down. Okay, at this point, I think you know the drill. Let's look at king safety. Black is up by 1 pawn. Let's call this one the extra pawn. Looks like these two are kind of offsetting. For space, black does have a little bit more space. For piece activity, black's pieces are a little bit better. They are rolling down these files versus white is in a little bit more of a, passive defensive role. And then for long-term weaknesses or strengths, an outside pawn can be a larger asset than a more inside pawn in the endgame. I am giving an advantage to black. Sorry, Tal. Looks like your opponent maybe has outplayed you in this game, or I don't understand what's going on. We know that his opponent's already up by 1 piece of material, so the evaluation should be -1. With these other kind of minor strengths, I'd give him maybe a little bit more. The thing I want to offset this with is this is a very simplified endgame. There's not very many pieces left on the board. I want to give this evaluation a -1.1. And our survey says we're at -2.6. Okay, so our survey says we're at -2.6. I kind of wanted to believe it, but with all these pieces being off, I figured maybe there wasn't quite so much available. I'm up to 10 points. Where are you guys at? Okay, move 31. Let's see if we could make this our last game, or if I have to be up here all night. We can obviously see he has a large space advantage right now. All this stuff is in his opponent's side of the board. We look at king safety, though. His king is sitting alone here on G1. It does not have any pawns defending it, versus his opponent's king has, at least both of these 2 pawns. He's kind of hiding out right here. And he has this light squared bishop nicely defending right in front. As we look at pieces, this bishop, while it does not have any targets, it is playing that good defensive role. Conversely, let's look at this white knight. It's not really able to move to most of the squares. It could re-enter the game right here. And the other thing I want to look at is if, let's just say this knight does, come into the game this way, I'm worried about white on the light squares. So obviously this light squared bishop is unopposed on the light squares specifically. And let's just say that this rook comes down here and the king, moves up here instead of offering a trade. Now this check exists. The queen's getting into the game. A lot of bad things could happen. So maybe this knight is forced to be defending this square from black, which is kind of crazy to think about. Material. Probably should have started with that. Didn't. Tal is up a pawn. So he has this e5 pawn. If he is able to withstand the pressure, trade off all his pieces, not get checkmated, then he should be able to potentially win this game. Everything I'm seeing right here, if I'm going to pick a side, I'm rather going to have black. Even if a worst case scenario and it seems like this pawn's becoming too powerful, I figure there's got to be some sort of repetitive check eventually available. Those light squares are just too weak. He's for choice in my mind. All that being said, oh man, it's just so hard. I think I'm going to give black a -1.1 on this game. Let's see what the evaluation has to say. This is what I'm talking about. Oh man, wait up a second. Wait up. Look at that. We're at -1.3. Actually got one right for the first time. The idea here is for black, which I didn't see, to push this A5 move, undermine these pawns, go after all of these weak pawns. When he has a safer king, white's not going to be able to do anything about it. Pretty cool idea. In the game, though, what ends up happening is, hey, this guy, he has my idea, which is pretty exciting. And after trades and all that kind of good stuff. But unfortunately for Tal's opponent, he is playing against Tal. And after all the dust settles, Tal is going to win with this extra pawn here on E5. Are you going to do a snow angel or a sand angel or a dirt angel? Or are you going to have some mint chocolate chip ice cream like I am? Hope you learned something about positional evaluation here today with me, rolled with the punches. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Have a great night, guys. I'll see you back here soon. Yep, this is stuff. This is what dreams are made of. Thank you, Tal. Thank you, Stockfish.